Okay. Gas and damage taken debugging, part 2, focusing around the beast for a shawl. Beast for a shawl is the, well, it's the elephant. I figure you may as well remove the head to make the elephant pilot the whole business. And what we want to focus on right now is righteous fire. Fun thing, the person who designed Beast for a Shawl intended it to be used for righteous fire, so it's like, oh, well, how hard can it be to get righteous fire in there? Turns out not very hard, except for the part where you have to get rid of chaos inoculation. Because you can't do chaos inoculation combined with righteous fire. Chaos inoculation sets your life total to 1. As soon as your life total hits 1, righteous fire goes away. So right now we have 2000 life, we have about 4000 energy shield. Which is meh. And we can do like tier 9, tier 10 maps. We are level 88. And there's still a lot of optimization to be done. Let's take a look at the passive tree and how we make this possible. We are taking careful conservationist because this is what we pathed by, and 25% chance to gain a flask charge when you deal a critical strike. We don't have high crit. Right? Move this over. We don't have high crit, but we had a lot. So this should generate a reasonable number of charges, but we still have to be careful how many charges we consume. Evasion mastery. Every 4 seconds regenerate energy shield equal to 1% of your evasion rating over 1 second. We don't have a lot of evasion. But even if you divide it by 4, right, like our defenses are like 600, 1600, so divided by 4 means it's still 400 life, 400 energy shield a second, which then of course gets doubled, because that's what Beast for Shawl does if you have a very nicely rolled one. So that's still 400 life a second, which is better than like Vitality, which is like 173. So yeah, that's good. 30% of chaos damage doesn't bypass energy shield, just not to blow up against chaos mobs. We have some life recoup over here. This is there so that we can gain some life, because otherwise we can't. And then we have 2% of energy shield per second regeneration. And we have this cluster for a bunch more regen. 50 life per second as well, which is effectively 1.25% regen. We have a bunch of regen on these clusters, so the opportunity cost of doing this is relatively high. Right, we spend this cluster of passives, so that's 4, Zealot's Oath, 5, this cluster of passive, 9, 10 for the evasion energy shield mastery. Yeah, so we spent about 10 points making this happen, along with a timeless jewel. We don't recover much life, right? So really, that extra damage we take of 2000 life a second, that's all going to have to be handled by our energy shield. If our energy shield was higher and or our life was lower, then this would be easier. And what do we gain for that? Well, we get 37% more spell damage. That's really good. Like that is a amazing support in today's day and age of Path of Exile. So, is it worth it? Well, there's something wonky about the way this build is right now, and that makes me start to question that. Because our increased damage isn't very high. We have 100% increased damage from the Fire Mastery. right? 100% increased damage with hits against ignited enemies. Most of what we do is hits, and we have close to 100% ignite chance. And everything has a little bit of fire damage. Then we have over here 24 elemental damage, 20%, so that's another 44, another 20 over here, so 64, 10 over here, 12 over here, so 74, 84, and then 50 over here. So we got like 130% increased damage on our tree. I don't think there's spell damage on any of this stuff. No, we're never on full energy shield. That's a bad assumption. Yeah, that's exciting. So we got a, what was it, like 250? 100, 150, these two is 50, so like 250 spell damage. Let's look at the inventory and see what else we had. We'll talk about this in a second. This gives us 70% increased damage, so we're like 320. We have 22 and 25%, so 360. We have another 12% spell damage on here. The other stuff actually doesn't end up working very well for spell damage. So we have 370, 380 thereabouts. And then we have Hiron's Fury. Now most of this only affects lightning damage. Most of the damage we do is lightning damage because we use Spellblade to do most of our damage. This is 20% increased lightning damage per frenzy charge, and we have 7 frenzy charges. So that's 140% increased damage. So we're like somewhere in the mid 400s, mid 500s in damage. So 40% more damage, which is what Righteous Fire buys us, is equivalent to 200%-ish increased damage. This is all napkin math, but if you look at our passive tree, we spend a lot to get there, right? We spend these nodes, so that's 4 nodes, 8 nodes, 9, 10 nodes with these two over here, if you want to do that, 11. We could, I've got a node over here, 12. Some of these nodes we're gonna need just to cover our bases again. But it's fair to say that we have 7 nodes, which effectively net us 200% increased damage. If we spend those nodes over here, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that is 12, 10, 10, 10, so it's 30, 40, 70, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 70% increased damage. So it's damage efficient, barely. If we look at the money investment, the way that we end up making the numbers work is with a Glimpse of Chaos, which sets our chaos resistance to 0. This cost me 2 exalts, which is about the value of everything else put together. Right, this is double corrupted gloves, which cost an exalt. This is some very high nice resistant boots, which are cost me an exalt. So, everything else is a couple of chaos. Including the Beast for Shawl cost me a couple of chaos. Like, these things are not very expensive. Possibly not worth it. Arguably not worth it. On the long term, probably worth it. Let's take a Caracas map. This gives physical damage reduction and frenzy charge, just to get an idea of what it looks like. So, all but one of our flasks are automated at this point. And we need a flask to cap out our resistances. This is not great. Alright. So we have these two are reused end of flask effect. That's to reduce the number of flask charges we use. These two are still the same. This one removes our chance to get shocked. This one then shocks us, and then we use the Doctor's Quicksilver to trigger the Vessel of Victor, because the Vessel of Victor is used when its adjacent flask is used, and this one is used when full. Vessel of Victor, because it has this 20% of lightning damage leaches life, it creates insanely large energy shield leeches because we have Ghost Reaver. I think Ghost Reaver does that. Right, this is 20% is an insanely high number. So that's where we're at right now. So given that, let's get the party started. Oh, this is more exciting than I was intending. Alright, so everything is up and running. Fantastic. Let's trigger Righteous Fire. And we are being a little bit more cautious on how fast we engage large packs of monsters. Biggest reason for that is that whenever you engage a large pack of monsters, you have to worry that you just blow yourself up. So you don't want to do that. Once you are like running through packs of monsters, then life is pretty good and everything just mostly dies. You will notice that there's definitely some monsters that don't. Over there we got a bleed. The bleed, or for corrupted blood. Corrupted blood is an issue. I mean, we leech insanely frequently. We have no immunity to it. But as you can see, like our flasks are doing a pretty good job of staying full, and even against like the map boss will probably find the same effect, where our flasks are pretty much just full. Got a Harbinger. I pretty much have to narrate this because I know that cast and damage taken in general doesn't make the best videos. This build is no exception. It will look like ass. And if you're wondering, like, what does it look like on my end? Decent. There's no slideshow, usually. Sometimes it definitely goes into slideshow territory. So yeah, otherwise it's still pretty much walking simulator, cast and damage taken setup. It's doing fine. Yeah, it's just look at bossing damage for a second. Just hoping I'm not an idiot and get myself killed. So interesting thing there. This boss does those chaos damage things. Those chaos damage things are a pretty big issue, and you'll see that it took us a little bit of time to get to the point where chaos damage, bad. We recouped out of that. Chaos damage, bad. We got another phase. Are we in a really bad territory? We almost got into really bad territory and ran out of flask charges. So we do have flask sustain issues. Are you dead yet? There he is. Alright. Was this good? Meh. It still has a ways to go. Right? It was not super sketch. At this point we're gonna run out of flask charges because there's nothing to crit, which allows us to not generate any flask charges. We don't recover flask charges passively. And we'll very quickly start to run out of life because our uncapped fire resistance just dropped below 75%. And there it goes away. And then as fast as our energy shield fill up, that's just all regen. I think it fills up faster when you have happen to hit the 1 second where you regen equal to your energy shield. So yeah, questions. Is this worth it? It might be. The opportunity costs that we had out of this. We had to get rid of Forbidden Right. Right, because if we didn't get rid of Forbidden Right, we would take very large chaos damage hits, and our chaos resistance is 0. And 25% of our energy shield is 1000, and then 12% of our life is 2400, so we would take a hit in the neighborhood of 1.2k. That's a problem. We can't really handle that. By the way, Forbidden Right is how you could, if you could handle that hit, then you can use Forbidden Right to kickstart higher level cast and damage takens. So there's not saying that's a closed door. I'm just saying that right now that door will blow our brains out, because we're gonna hit this thing is gonna trigger 4 times a second. If this thing triggers 4 times a second, that means that we take 100% of energy shield damage and 50% of our life. Since our life recovery has to deal with all that, that's a big issue. We can't do that right now. Maybe in the future. We switch out a helmet for a much more expensive helmet. It has 10% increased cooldown recovery rate, so it's 10% more damage, which is nice. And we are relying on flasks. And what we saw was that the flasks did get a little sketchy at the end. So, and we don't have a way to turn off Righteous Fire. We didn't use our G8 flask during that run. Maybe at the beginning, but after that I didn't hit it. And then we had an automated Vessel of Vinctar, and we had a Quicksilver. Both of these were using more charges than they had to. This one probably didn't, but the Doctor's Quicksilver did. Because one, this one fills itself up relatively quickly, and it's used in full, whereas these are used at the end of Flask effect. So one of the things I'm looking at is, could we go with Master Alchemist, because it's cheap. I love cheap. And Snatch Set from Pathfinder. What Master Alchemist does, 50% chance for flasks not to consume charges. Let's just leave it at that. Removing elemental ailments when you use a flask, that's a little sus. It was really good a year ago. Today it's hard to trigger flasks that frequently. So yeah, that's where we're at. Other innovations, Ball Lightning still in there, Spark is in there, Blazing Salvo, all of those generate lots of hits. Firestorm, lots of hits. Glacier Cascade, questionable, but fair number of hits. And then we have Bladefall, questionable, but a fair number of hits. Blade Vortex, it's fine. Ethereal Knives, super questionable. This probably should be something else. And Soul Rend. Soul Rend is doing the Lord's work. It only has a damage effectiveness of 170%. But it is a very slow moving projectile, and it has a massive spell damage leech's energy shield on it. With 10% of leech being instant, this is a pretty big deal. Especially as the Vessel of Vinctar isn't up. If the Vessel of Vinctar is up, then every single spell does more than that just out of the box. So if we can get 100% uptime on Vessel of Vinctar, then we have insanely high leech, and we might be able to start tweaking the numbers a little bit elsewhere. Okay, that's where we're at right now. Level 88, still gaining experience, so we'll probably see higher levels in the near term, and then yeah, we'll have other opportunities.